As far as what a family lawyer would need to know about drug testing is you need to know, first of all, what is the drug of choice? Okay, because it matters, because I told you what a typical drug test is, but you can add many, many, many different combinations. If you know this person has an addiction to oxycodone, then you know that you're going to want an extended opiate panel, because your synthetic opiates are what becomes part of that panel. Your oxycodone, oxymorphone, hydrocodone, hydromorphone, tramadol, those type of things are going to come on your synthetic panel. So it's really important that you know what drug of choice is. The next thing you need to know is, do we care what this person did 3 months ago, or do we just want to know what they did 3 days ago? It matters. So let's say you've got a custody thing where you're keeping the kids Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and we're going to drug test you every Monday. Well, that's going to give us 3 days. So obviously you just need to do a urine test. But if we're worried about long-term usage, if we're worried about someone that has some type of an addiction, maybe they don't use every 3 days, maybe they use once a week, and you're wanting to know, what's going on with this person over a period of time, then hair testing would be really, really good. If you wanted to know, hey, did this person use on the way to pick up the kids today or yesterday, then your saliva test would come into play. So it's really important that you want to, very specifically, you need to know what drug of choice, and you need to know what it is that you want to know. You can't just order a drug test, because a drug test is not a panorama of things. It's very, very specific. If you know the drug of choice, then people in the drug testing industry, for instance, Mid-South drug testing, I can tell you, hey, this is what you want to do. And if you tell me what you want to know, I can pretty much tell you whether you want hair, urine, or saliva testing, or a combination. A lot of people like doing a combination because it works out better if you have, different methodologies, so you can prove different things. As far as your panels go, I talked to you about a 5-panel. You can get, all a panel is it tells you a 5-panel. What I explained to you, probably I explained 10 or 11 different drugs that are on a 5-panel, standard 5-panel. And that's just a bonus. You just get extra drugs because the parent drug, breaks off into other stuff. When you start adding drugs, you start talking about a 9-panel, 10-panel, 12-panel, 14-panel. That goes back to what is the drug of choice. Benzodiazepines, which is going to be your Xanax and Valium, they're not going to be on a standard drug test. So if you know the person is doing benzodiazepines or abusing benzodiazepines and you're worried about that, then you want to specifically ask for that, because you don't have to do a large panel. Sometimes you can just add that specific drug on, or if it's a barbiturate, or if it's methadone, or if it's propoxyphene. There's so many different ways that you can do it. And we have standard drug tests. We have standard 5-panel, 9-panel, 10-panel, 12-panel. But it depends on what you want to know. So it goes back to, you've got to know what the drug of choice is. Normally, if you don't know, I would say order the highest panel you can. In a urine test, typically you're going to order a 12-panel. In a hair test, we can actually go up to 18 panels. The problem you run into is localities are very different. Like here in Memphis, you tend to see meth and cocaine and heroin. But in Northeast Arkansas, you see hydrocodone and meth. So it kind of depends on where you are as to what drugs of choice we're seeing the most of. It also depends on, if the ex-spouse says, well, he acts like he's drowsy all the time. Well, we can assume that's probably some type of an opiate or barbiturate or something like that. Or, he never eats. We can say, well, that may be amphetamine or methamphetamine or cocaine. In general, though, if you don't know, the best thing to do is to order the largest panel you can order. Now, the problem with that is, especially in the hair test, we're going to have to take more hair, because hair is not just volume, but it's also weight. If you have very thin hair, we're going to have to take more hair. But because there's more panels to test, or there's more drugs in the panel to test, it's going to take more hair. So if you don't know, the best thing to do is to ask for the largest there is. I included in this conference, I included a urine chart and a hair chart that can kind of tell you what goes into those different panels depending on what you want. So worst case scenario is if you don't know, you always want to start with a 5 panel because you know you're going to get some of that extended opiates anyway. And you know, those are going to be your most abused drugs. So worst case scenario, if you don't have a lot of money and you just want to order the very, very basics, you're going to cover methamphetamine, you're going to cover amphetamine, you're going to cover cocaine, and you're going to cover hydrocodone and oxycodone. So at the very least, you know, in heroin, you've got the, you know, the small amount of what's probably abused most in this area. As far as in the drug testing court order, we talked about this a little bit. You really need to know, goes back to you really need to know the drug of choice. If you don't know what the drug of choice is, you can simply put the largest urine panel or the largest hair test panel there is. Now, be aware that drug testing is not cheap. I mean, I can tell you my prices, but if you go from a 5 panel hair test to an 18 panel hair test, you're talking about a difference of about $300 or $400. And when I send stuff to the lab, if you don't pay me, I'm not going to send your stuff to the lab because they're going to debit my account that day. So it's really important that your client understands that too. So the more you know about what's going on, the cheaper it is and the more efficient it is and the better it is for the outcome. The other thing to consider is that when you have two spouses involved, they really need to do the same drug test and they need it to go to the same lab. So if you're sending Johnny over to drug test A and you're sending Sarah over to drug test B, they may not be going to the same lab and they may not be getting the same type of test. So you need to be very careful that when you write up documents, you're like, they both need to have A, B, C, and D done, whatever that may be, whether it's a urine test and a hair test and an alcohol test, whatever that is. They need to make sure they're having the same thing done. And most likely, you would want it done at the same laboratory. So if you were going to order something and you were going to say, hey, I want to send these people to Mid-South drug testing, in the order you could put, I want the largest panel urine and the largest panel hair, and I want Sarah and Johnny's test to go to the same laboratory for the urine and the hair. And that would go a long way into telling the drug testing company what exactly you need done. Most of the time when we get a court order, we're going to make we should always, but we're going to make a photocopy of the court order for the mom and the dad, so that we know what's going on in both, so we know who to release it to and all that. The other thing in drug testing is although we're not really under HIPAA, we do follow HIPAA. So we don't release information unless it's on a release form. So if you want it released to you, you better put it in the order. If you want it released to the guardian ad litem, if you want it released to opposing counsel, if you want it released to a judge, put all that in the order so that we know to release it. Because even if you come in and you say, well, I'm only going to release it to my attorney, if I have a court order that says, no, you're going to release it to these 4 different people, that's who I'm going to release it to. Worst case scenario is if I can't do that, you can always subpoena the records. Now, having said that, you can only subpoena the records for records that we actually have. There are people that want to do John Does and Jane Does and all kinds of stuff like that, do anonymous type drug testing. We really don't care why you're doing a drug test if that's what you want to do, but when it comes to subpoenaing the records, you can't subpoena a Jane Doe or a John Doe because we don't know who they are and neither do you. And really, it's not legally binding. So if you're worried about your kid doing drugs and you want to get hair out of their hairbrush and bring it to me to test, I can do that, but you can't take it to a court of law. It's not going to happen. It's amazing to me how many people on a daily basis come in my office. So of 30 people that come in my office every day, 10 people are going to try to cheat a drug test. So across the board, it's a third. And I would say that with family law, it's no different. Now, when you get into different populations like probation or Department of Children's Services, where they've had their children already taken away, that number goes up tremendously. It's a lot higher. But just in general, it's about a third. It's actually about a third. People bring in urine every single day. People try to do stuff to their hair every single day.